Hello, pod smashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of Daily Bit. Pod Smash will always love you. So much better when you Celine a scene here at 80-Bit Pod Smash. We are where gaming goes to grab a beer.
Or
in this
wine.
case, a glass of wine.
Or, hold on, some chocolate.
Ooh.
Little dark chocolate. It's the only, like, Valentine's-y kind of thing I had. When you suggested that we should get wine, I thought that was such a good idea. But I don't have time to go get a bottle of wine on the afternoon of recording. There's too many kids to take care of and responsibilities.
So
and
much insight into your life that you don't have just wine in your house every day.
It is, yeah. I wish we did, but we don't. So, and we don't really drink alcohol very much during the week anyways. I'm more of a social drinker anyways. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I want a beer and play games, or I just need to unwind, but it's not part of my daily habits in the same way that, like, coffee is.
Gotta have coffee.
I figured I'd get some chocolate so that we could have something sensual to pair with the experience.
We are your hosts.
Ow. Oh, Penguin and Termite, we're your hosts. I'm Penguin.
And I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's
with our
right.
face full of chocolate.
I'm still chewing it too. Wow. Oh, man. Chocolate. Today,
so classy.
The idea we're talking about in honor of Valentine's Day, obviously, is we're talking about love stories. We're getting real romantic, and some might say traditionally feminine, and we're talking about love, but love stories. So, as opposed to,
we're gonna break those traditional walls down. We're gonna talk about love, and it's not feminine.
Love is manly.
Can be. It's feminine
Absolutely
too.
Can be. It's both. It's not tied to any specific gender, nor should it be, because it's literally how the species propagates itself. Anyways,
hot.
Last year, I think we talked about romance systems. So it was more of a gameplay design kind of thing. This is more of the other side of the coin that we like to tackle, where we're actually talking about the narrative. So we'll talk about what love stories are and what video games may be great love stories in their own right. So we'll dive into all that and more. But we are where gaming goes to grab a beer, wine, or a piece of chocolate. So please tell us what you are consuming on this in honor of this lovely Valentine's Day.
Sure. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Hey, we share our delectable delights.
Oh, to me specifically? I thought you were going to say it to our
listeners.
Yeah,
why not, right?
Like, we do love our listeners. But yes, happy Valentine's Day to you too. I at the risk of maybe making a fool of myself, I can say I do love you.
Aw, I love you too.
Yeah. Okay, good. If you didn't say it back, it's always worse. And then
I should have trolled you.
You really should have. That would have been good. See, that would have been good, because of the whole rest of the episode, I feel like I have to nag you just to.
And see, to me, that would be awful for you. I would never want to put you through that.
But
I'm telling you, I'm not a good pranker. I'm not a good pranker.
I know. You never know when to actually strike when the iron's hot. That's funny. You didn't even have to do it very long, just like 5 minutes. Yeah, what are you drinking?
Drinking a Spanish Cabernet Sauvignon, better known in the wine community as a Cab Sav, from 2020, and it's called Yay Yay, and each E, it's Y-E-Y-E, Yay Yay, and the E's are accented. It is, I'm going to read a little bit of blurb on the back. Yay Yay reflects our excitement for the modern era of Spanish winemaking. Our Cabernet Sauvignon, an intense, bold grape of Spanish origin, comes from the northeastern part of the country and exhibits juicy notes of black cherry, roisenberry, and black currant. Imported and bottled by Wink.
Ooh,
there you go. Yep, it's a Wink wine.
Wink
is a company that we order wine through every single month. They send us 4 bottles, so we always have wine on hand, which is why I'm baffled by people who don't.
You guys gave us like a cheap trial to that one time. It was good. It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It just, when it ran out, and that's kind of how alcohol goes in our house.
Yep.
Yeah, the only alcohol I keep on hand anymore is literally like reserved for the podcast. The chocolate that I got is the dark sea salt chocolate from Aldi. The brand is
that's good. Yes.
Oh, so good. Macy and I always, that is something Macy and I keep on hand these days. But it's perfect. When I decided to go the chocolate route in order to kind of, reflect your wine choice, I
it's like I'm a mirror.
the beer. Yeah, I had to pick the beer that most was suited to the chocolate then instead of trying to pick like a beer that was thematically as close as possible because I didn't really have any. But this works on multiple levels. This is Raven's Roost Baltic Porter,
Nice.
as I will read. With a robust and roasty malt aroma, Raven's Roost Baltic Porter has notes of chocolate, caramel, toffee. Searching for the perfect porter, quoth the Raven, nevermore. So, Poe. Parkway Brewing Company is the one who made it. So it's it's a good porter, and it does pair well with the chocolate. Honestly, I think that I would think this porter was not as good if I was not also actively drinking it with this dark chocolate sea salt. Like the salt, like the toffee notes, the salt kind of pairs with the toffee notes, and the chocolate pairs with the chocolate notes, and all around, I'm having a great time.
Yes, that sounds awesome. I'm trying to figure out where Parkway Brewing is. Where is it?
It says it on the thing. Salem, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's near.
Nice.
Nearby. Yeah, close enough. Awesome. Well, that is beer. So is there anything you want to discuss? I think I know what you're going to want to discuss because we haven't really gotten to talk about it yet between the two of us because it just happened today.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I assumed you wanted to talk about Bungie and Sony.
Oh, yeah. Big news in the gaming industry that we don't have a news show outlet with which to discuss these things.
Yeah.
Duh. I was like, what?
Yeah, that thing.
Okay, yes.
You're like, no,
Sony.
Penguin, I was saving that for the news show that we don't do.
It was totally like out of my world.
Mm-hmm.
I found gamesindustry.biz reported it. I don't know who let it out of the bag first, but Sony acquired Bungie as a exclusive studio. They bought Bungie for $3.6 billion, according to gamesindustry.biz. And the Bungie will be an independent subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment, run by a board of directors consisting of its current CEO and chairman, Pete Parsons, and the rest of the studio's current management team. So nothing changes at Bungie, other than it's now under a partnership with Sony, i.e., I guess.
I imagine a certain amount of profits goes towards Sony, yes.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine that
other
than the board of directors getting their payout, any profit beyond that goes directly to Sony and their board of directors.
CEO Jim Ryan of Sony Interactive Entertainment and president. I didn't realize he had two titles, CEO and president. We've had a strong relationship with Bungie since the inception of the Destiny franchise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to officially welcome the studio to the PlayStation family. This is an important step in our strategy to expand the reach of PlayStation to a much wider audience. We understand how vital Bungie's community is to the studio and look forward to supporting them as they remain independent and continue to grow. Like Bungie, our community is core to PlayStation's DNA, and our shared passion for the gamer and building the best place to play will now evolve even further. Best place to play. Good, strong quote right there. He's quoting Phil Spencer. That's funny.
Oh, did he?
Both, well, not literally. I mean, it's not like marked. That's what Phil Spencer always says, that Xbox is the best place to play. And it's like his
Sony's
thing.
been saying that for a while too, though. So I feel like they all just say
greatness
that.
awaits is what Sony says.
It's the same as I don't know, McDonald's and Burger King both claiming to have the best burger in America, despite the fact that everyone knows that they're not, and they know that they're not. But you claim it anyways because that's the business you're in. So of course, Nintendo would be like, "Yeah, no, we're the best place to play because you can't play anything else. You can't play any of our stuff on anything else." I think it's interesting they're staying. The independence thing, they're staying third party. That's not been Sony's strategy thus far. This really does feel like a knee-jerk reaction to Microsoft. And that is the reason why. Like, Sony's strategy has always been to like heavily curate and nurture a relationship and, you know, sort of have a developer prove themselves and then bring them wholly on as a part of the team, as part of the, you know, I am reticent to say these days, but family. But yeah, I mean, and by family, I simply mean that they you know, share resources and work together, and they operate as like, you know, separate teams of one big team. And that doesn't seem to be like what's happening here, which again seems to me that they just made this deal. They said, who can we get in response to this? And I was hoping that wouldn't happen. I was hoping Sony wouldn't just change their strategy. What do we think is good for Bungie? Is this good for Sony? What does this mean about Destiny? What does this mean about Bungie?
And Bungie have always had a really good relationship, if I recall correctly. And of course, if you Google anything now, all you're going to find is this deal. So I can't like quickly Google it, but I know there were Destiny PlayStation exclusive partnerships in the past. There was some content exclusivity, like gating, timed exclusive things going on with PlayStation and Destiny specifically. And that was after they had left Bungie, or after they had left Activision to be on their own, and then like PlayStation got Destiny 2 stuff. Like I remember there being a thing. It's like a thing. So obviously PlayStation and Bungie have been like in cahoots and have been working together in the past. There's a pre-existing relationship going way back to the comment you had made, where like PlayStation's strategy has always been to kind of court a studio for a while and not take them in, but like work with them for a long period of time. And yes, they generally would take them in wholesale, like they did Insomniac and in Naughty Dog and Ready at Dawn, etc. But with this deal, they're letting them maintain their independence, and they're, as far as we all know in speculation, like they're going to allow Bungie to continue to put Destiny on all of their platforms. So like Xbox players won't be excluded here because it's Bungie's deal. I'm sure Sony will get a cut. You know, it's like MLB The Show being on Game Pass, like PlayStation gets a cut of that. So I think this is good for everyone, I guess, other than like the general cynicism we have against the consolidation of all of the companies in the gaming industry and how like that in and of itself can be problematic. As far as like a specific view for what Sony is doing and what Bungie is doing, Bungie gets PlayStation money. PlayStation gets Bungie IP and expertise to share and tools to use to spread amongst its studios. So like in theory, all of its studios could be bolstered by like the
Destiny
IP
spin-offs.
I mean, like all kind of things. And it's confirmed in this deal today in interviews that are going around it that Bungie is working on a new IP that's not Destiny. So whatever that new IP is now going to be a PlayStation IP, probably, like most likely, whatever that is. But Destiny, as we know it now, will stay on Xbox. And so like this isn't going to be a big disruptive claim or disruptive move in the industry as much as the Activision Blizzard one will be.
But it's an easier one to implement. That's the nice thing is it's a smaller company with a lot less to incorporate, and with a whole notion around autonomy and independence that will also help the transition, I think, go smoother. It just really is a little out of character for Sony is all. It's not their thing. And but I do find it a kind of a stick it to Microsoft kind of thing, right? Like Bungie was there. Bungie probably made their most successful IP, right? Yeah, it used to be Microsoft, and used to be Activision Blizzard too. Yeah. It really feels like they've been rock hopping as far away as possible from that mess. So maybe we should all follow Bungie.
Ooh, that's a good term. As far as rock hopping. Sorry, I like that. Okay.
As far as how I feel about it, meh, right? Like I played Destiny and I liked it for a brief window of time, and then did not like it, so, and haven't ever been able to get back into it. Tried like on 2 occasions to get back into it, and just meh. So not my cup of tea. And yeah, just there's nothing that Bungie's doing that makes me excited. So there's a part of me that kind of wishes that Destiny had flopped, so Bungie could have moved on to something better sooner. But I guess if they had flopped, then this wouldn't have happened. Who knows? So
imagine if Sony gives Killzone to Bungie.
Yeah,
Guerrilla's like hot and heavy on Horizon, right? Like maybe they make the next big open world thing that's not Horizon, and they go off and sail into the sunset doing awesome things. And they're like, oh, well, we have this Killzone IP. Who makes good shooters? Who's made Halo? What was Killzone but supposed to be the Halo killer? Give it to Bungie and let Bungie create the next Killzone. It would be amazing with all the tools and assets that they got from the Decima engine. And oh man, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well then. Movements in the gaming industry that are, if not promising overall, are at least interesting to talk about, are our favorite things. But
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Favorite things. Segment of our show where we share with you something that we are excited about, intrigued by, interested in hopes that you might go out and seek your next favorite thing. Keep it tight. Keep it short. Roll through it.
All right. My wife and I, after 2.5 months of living here, had our very first date night, and we saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and it was my favorite thing.
Good. Nice.
Tight, right? That's it.
Yeah, very tight. Yeah, I want to see it.
I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not spoiling or risking any spoilers for anyone. So I saw it. It's good. It's awesome.
I haven't seen
it,
but I pretty much know most of the major spoilers. It's fine because I don't care. The I want to see it really bad though, and it's on Vudu for like $20. And so
is
I'm
it really?
Like,
That's worth it because our tickets were $40.
Seriously. I've been thinking about either doing that or eventually soon, like I would say within the next 3 months, it's supposed to come to Stars first. Like apparently they worked out a deal with Stars. And so like you can get Stars for like $5 right now for a month, but still, it's still pretty decent. It's better $5 for a month is better than like one time for $20. So
Yeah, and plus you get
Yeah.
access to all the Stars content, which you might want to dabble in.
Oh yeah, my
you know.
wife's like, oh, I can catch up on Outlander. Oh, all
There
right.
you go.
So cool. All right, my favorite thing is also a piece of media. Me and my wife started Arcane. Finally, I've had many people recommending it to me. It is again, I'm not a League of Legends person, so I wasn't drawn to it by virtue of its intellectual property. But boy, oh boy, people were right. Like this is one of those circumstances where it's like, okay, yeah, like you don't have to be a League of Legends fan. Or even know anything about it. My wife doesn't know anything about it, and she's enjoying it too. So everyone always said 3 episodes in, it gets like nuts good. Like the 3rd episode is just like crazy awesome, and it did not disappoint. It was really good. So well animated, well done, well written, great story. Y'all should check it out. It's on Netflix. Arcane.
Cool. League of Legends anime.
Cool.
I like it. I want to play. I want to play
right.
it. I want to watch it too. It's on my list of things to watch.
Yeah, but who has time? Okay. All right. So that is favorite things, which leads us to our last segment before our main topic, which is DLC. Hey guys, you know I hate to interject on good DLC, but this was not a very good DLC. It was not our finest. And basically we were trying to do a Romeo and Juliet thing. I didn't have a good answer coming forward. Termite had a passable one, but it was kind of repetitive content that we've already covered before. So we decided that in order to save on time, since we kind of needed it this episode, we got a little rambly. We wanted to keep as much time for the good stuff as possible, and so this wasn't our finest stuff. So we went ahead and cut it, and hopefully we can revisit that DLC at a future time, and this time come with a better answer prepared. So we will see you on the flippity flip. Thanks for understanding. We're back. We're back, guys. Whew, we're talking about love. Think about love, love. That causes us to be. Come sing about love, love. That causes the stone and trees. Come sing about love. That's from Godspell.
Oh,
Classic 1960s. Ooh, you think I'd know? Musical about the book of Matthew, actually. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about love stories, even though arguably that is a love story. And we're going to break down love stories in video games. Both, I don't know, I feel like depending on your perspective, you may be surprised at how many games could be considered love stories. And also, you might be surprised at how few, how much like, for as like universal as this topic is, and in how much it's covered in almost every other media. I was actually like racking my brain thinking like, and considering that like, yeah, at the best, like the love subplots are almost always just like, hey, I'm a man and you're a hot lady. Let's get together, just to reinforce how BA I am. And like, that's not a love story. I'm sorry. That's not love. There's nothing about that. The sort of James Bond Casanova, like, you know, the woman only exists to make the man look awesome. That's not a love story. So you can dress it up as much as you want, but yeah, I don't consider that. So yeah, anyways, so why don't we start there then? So if that's not love, what is love? And
baby, don't hurt me.
I know. I was hoping
no more.
I teed that one.
I believe in a thing called love. Just listen to the rhythm of my heart.
So anyway, why don't you break down for us what at least you and I consider to be a love story, and then we'll talk about some of the different flavors or types or kinds of love stories that may come up in as we talk about video game examples.
Do you have a Wikipedia example or a definition? Sorry.
No, I created this definition, and I like to think that I'm pretty much on the mark. But
I'm trying. There's so many like movies and content called love story that when I just Google
mine. Just read.
I see mine. Yours, but you should read. You should talk to yours.
Fine.
There you go.
I defined a love story as any plot or subplot, major subplot, that features love between 2 or more characters as a central element, and specifically as that element, love either serves as the primary motivation, the source of conflict, or the resolution to the character's conflict for their journey. And in my opinion, people might debate me on this, but I think that any kind of love, variety of love would be a love story. So, you know, obviously romantic love between 2 lovers, 2 people who are engaged in a romantic and or sexual relationship, that would be eros, if you're, you know, a follower of C.S. Lewis's love book thing, The 4 Loves or whatever. So romantic love. Well, yeah, but he named them after Greek. Actually, you know what? I think ultimately the idea does sort of stem from Greek thought. But yeah, eros, romantic love. Familial love would be, in my opinion, a love story. So the love between a parent and their child, or the love between siblings. that is all familial love, and it's a whole different type of love, but no less a love story or a driving motivator. And then platonic love falls in that category for me as well. So the love of friends, brotherhood, like the sort of idea of brotherhood, camaraderie, the love one has for their people, their nation, their tribe. Those are all, I think, valid forms of love, and stories that feature them as the central element, I think, can be considered love stories. So under that framework, we can talk about different types of love stories then. So those are the different types of love that could be a love story. But what are the different types of love stories, different flavors, different kind of plot structures? You want to talk about some of these?
Yeah, I have a question for you, though. How we frame our definition, because there are some stories that focus on like the romance in such a way that's like dating, courtship, marriage, and it's the content, everything is about that. And I'm thinking of like The Notebook, right, as a movie.
Of course, yeah.
But there's also like love stories where like there's a war going on, like Romeo and Juliet, where there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and Romeo and Juliet just happen to be like in love, and there's their love story that's happening amidst the greater story, and like their love isn't.
That's
you know what I mean? Like
I would argue that
about the
Romeo
love.
and Juliet. No, Romeo and Juliet is still sort of a love story. I'll pick a different example for you because I had this thought. Sorry.
So you know what
I
get
what you're
about.
saying.
At least
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying like Lord of the Rings, right? Like where there's like a love and romance happens, between Aragorn and Arwen and Sam and Rosie. And again, if you're getting meta here, you can talk about the love, the camaraderie between the fellowship themselves that plays out. But it's happening but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is like the adventure, the tale. And that's why I included subplot, right? Like if it's a major subplot that still has I think it's more like if it has a lesson, or more importantly, if the characters still experience like major growth in their journey as a result of either the conflict, motivation, or resolution that the love brings about, then I still think it would be considered a love story, because it may be a love story and an adventure. It may be a love story and a war story. It may be a love story and a good versus evil tale, but it can still be a love story because the point is
all of the above.
Right. And gotcha. Love story, and we would focus on that. So okay, cool. Some of the types, comedic. Mm-hmm. Now this could be either like literally like a comedy, a funny, where the relationship is the source of humor, as in like the conflicts that happen in the relationship, those are where the funny happens, the jokes are centered around.
Mm-hmm.
But then it could also be comedic in the sort of classical sense where it's just a happy ending. Tragic is the opposite of that. Sad enemy. We talked a lot about these in our plot episode.
Yep.
Where yes, there's that's Romeo and Juliet, right? Like love is still a central thing. It's still driving the action, driving the conflict, but it doesn't end happily. It doesn't end well, and therefore a flavor of tragic would then be a revenge story. I think not all, but almost all revenge stories, especially ones where you're getting revenge on someone who killed someone you love. That, in my mind, is a love story, right? Because that love is the whole reason the story exists. It's the whole reason why you're going on revenge. So I think that in a way, it's twisted, it's dark, but it's like a dark version of a love story, in my opinion.
A lot of villains exude that kind of thing, like because their revenge consumes them, and they're evil, and they like Slytherins. They're just passionate, and they will do whatever it takes to meet their goal, and like revenge. And so like love is a motivation for a lot of antagonists and villains and such, but.
Well, but not unless you focus on it, right? Like,
right.
And that's what's always fun to me is when they do, oh yeah, this person's doing these terrible things because they're consumed by their fury at having lost someone. It's that whole, one of the greatest quotes of the last year or last 2 years was from WandaVision when he said, grief is just love persisting. I mean, in many ways, so is vengeance, right? At least if that vengeance is motivated by loss, right? If it's motivated by, personal vendetta, greed, whatever, like
right.
that's different. Like, oh, this person screwed me in a business deal, vengeance. No, that's not this. That's a different kind of vengeance, different motivation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's petty vengeance, so to speak. But if it's legitimately because like they killed my father, prepared to die, like we love a good, I don't know, and it makes them more sympathetic in my mind. It's always if well done, if well written. But some of the other more fun, things. There's I think that there's a lot of sort of the quote power of friendship or friendship is magic stories where like the characters, they have to overcome their obstacles by working together and realizing that it's their friendship that makes them strong. It's a cliche, but like it's a love story, right? Like essentially it's motivated by
that's Kingdom Hearts,
bond.
by the way. You just
boom.
You just defined Kingdom Hearts in a single sentence, which I think is like cataclysmically impossible to do, and you just did it. So there you go.
Oh, I'm glad I can do the impossible.
Yep.
Melodrama is simply the definition of melodrama is when something's kind of over the top, and there are some sort of things like the woman tied to the classic example I always think of is the woman tied to the train tracks by the evil mustache twirling villain. Like that's melodrama, where everything's just kind of over the top and just like
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, Phantom of the Opera is a bit melodramatic. Yep. But melodrama plays a it's not necessarily a love story in and of itself. It could be something different, but
yeah,
love, obviously many love stories are melodramatic. And then we're getting into some cliche, and we're going to get into some cliches here with specifically with the sort of more romantically focused stories. But the idea of the meet cute, where it's two people meeting for the first time and they're going to fall in love just because the minute they meet, they love at first sight kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The romantic comedy or rom-com, that's kind of another trope where it's you don't see these often as much in video games, but that's sort of the love story that is like, oh, it's really focused on the love plot, and again causes some of that comedic stuff as well. We talked about enemies to lovers. That's a big cliche in love stories where it's like, I hate you, but
they love each
due
other.
to circumstances, the hate that I feel for you is just really my passion for you that I have to guise up for some reason. Role reversal. So this would be a story like where, you've got a man who has to be saved by a woman from a dragon. So the role reversal where, again, the traditional roles are reversed, flipped on their heads. I prefer the ones where they're abolished entirely, but, there's still sort of a trope there. The idea of the Beauty and the Beast love story where it's like someone or something monstrous and someone or something beautiful and righteous, and how the beautiful righteous one sort of softens the harsh scary one. So you could think obviously Beauty and the Beast, but also stories like Pride and Prejudice is the same thing. There's of course the love triangle where two people love the same person and that person can't choose between the two.
Those are annoying.
Classic lie. Nobody likes them. Matchmaking, the idea where one character or person or
Fiddler on the Roof
being is trying to get two people to fall in love who wouldn't normally necessarily do so. Secret lovers, people who have to for some reason keep their romance a secret.
Also frustrating.
Friends to lovers is also sort of a similar one there, where it's people who it's not so much enemies to lovers where they hate each other, but where they're platonic, they're friends, they don't even think of each other. I don't even think of her that way. That's the friends to lovers. The Macy, my wife put this one forward, but the idea of like the romantic posturing or ruse is how I termed it, but she termed it like the jealousy one, where like you go after someone that you don't like in order to make the other person jealous. That's a trope that shows up in love stories. And then finally, the sort of rags to riches social class hierarchy, like The King and I, right? Where it's
Aladdin.
Like, oh, you're just, Aladdin, right? It's your, but it's not just rags to riches in the sense that like, oh, you've accomplished something, you've done something, you started a business, and rags to riches is also another trope. This is specifically right. Like you fall in love with someone, or someone falls in love with you, and they elevate your status through that love. That is also another common one. So boom, lightning round to those love stories. Let's talk real quick, try to give some quick examples. What are some of your favorite love stories that aren't from video games? And what do you like about love stories and look for in a love story? What makes love stories like tolerable, interesting, or even fulfilling for you?
My list is like very much not old art or like what you would learn about in school. Of course not.
I wouldn't have
really
expected
funny
that.
Because I like you have
that's good.
Shakespearean experience, and so you're like Romeo and Juliet and all of these other and I'm just
hold on, I'm gonna get
crap I watched on Netflix and and like it was so I'll go with mine since you just talked a lot. So my favorite love stories, and they're in no order at all other than just in my memory. There's a show on Netflix called Sex Education. It is definitely not kid friendly, but it consists of a buffet of love stories. I mean, the whole entire show has, there's like of all ages, even cross-generational love stories, non-heteronormative queer love stories, as well as normal heterosexual ones. And like, it's the whole gamut of society and life. And it's so raw and real. I love it. The Office, Jim and Pam, right? That's America's our generation. That's the millennial, like, quintessential romance. I love Harry Potter's bromance between Harry and Ron. Yes, it got a little emo and problematic in book 7, but like I was there for it. The bromance I loved in Lord of the Rings was highlighted.
Stable. It's like the most stable relationship in that entire series.
Who was
the Harry and Ron? until the end, until the
Yeah,
very end. It
right,
was like
yeah.
the most stable relationship.
It was, and same with Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is also
Really,
one of
you
my
mean
favorite
like
love
all the
stories.
moments that Frodo tried to leave him, and Sam's like, "Ah, you can't leave me."
Yeah, but it was like the self-sacrificing love of Frodo.
Oh,
He's
it's
like, I'm leaving
beautiful.
because I
It's
want to protect
beautiful.
you, and it's like it's not like he wants to leave him to abandon him.
Oh,
It's
right,
like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a stable relationship.
Well, and
It's
even
just like,
even Frodo's self-sacrifice in carrying the burden in the first place for everybody, right? Like
yeah,
his
it's awesome,
genuine,
right?
like, yeah. No, I got you.
Yeah,
I love
and
this is the love of the Fellowship together, right? Like all of them, they all give and
yeah,
sacrifice for each other and bond, and even the betrayal of Boromir. It's like, like Aragorn embraces him. Like the one thing I hate about Lord of the Rings, and this is the problem in the books too, is like there's no proper romantic subplot. Like at all, like no good. Like Arwen shows up as like Aragorn's trophy bride in like the last 2 pages of the book. Like
oh,
it's
interesting.
ridiculous in the book, right? We don't even really hear about her. Now their relationship is hinted at, but like we never actually like see her and don't get to know her as a character. She just shows up and is like, I'm your trophy bride now.
Oh, neat.
They actually gave her more development in the movies for that reason.
I heard about that.
But but yeah, no, the love between the characters, between the Fellowship is just wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll continue my gamut of different types of love stories. That's my list here. At least they're all hitting on different things, except for the bromance.
Sure.
I had to highlight 2 of those. But familial love is highlighted in a show called This Is Us on NBC that has consumed my life since it started. Like we're on season 6 now, so it's been like 6 years. But like it's a family, lots of family, 3 kids, like twins, kind of. One's adopted, but at the same time, it's a whole thing. It has not actually brought me to tears, but it has like brought me to emotional welling, almost tears, many times. My wife bawling on the couch, like crazy amounts of real life happening in that story. And then Master of None with Aziz Ansari, season 3 specifically highlighted a relationship between 2 women who wanted to adopt, and obviously they were not on the same page. And you saw what was an amazing relationship fall apart in a very real way, and then the fallout of that, and how they both had to work through that. So that was like unexpected, because Master of None is supposed to be like a comedy show, and like I watched it and I was like, this is so real. And then I'll throw a cheesy pick out there. I love this movie, Pitch Perfect. I think the love story, and it's super cute. That's like your traditional kind of almost rom-com level, like girl boy fall in love, and like it's a whole thing. So go check those out. Those are my favorite ones.
I'm gonna say, beyond all the Shakespeare and everything that will also show up on my list, also the greatest love story of all time, single-handedly, and one of the top like 5 movies of all time, Princess Bride. If you ever thought, is Penguin the kind of person who's gonna have a movie with the title with the words princess or bride in the title? Am I that kind of person? You would think not, but no, it actually, both of them show up. I do think it's chock full of melodrama and satire and everything, but it is just an amazing little love story. Fantastic story in general, movie, everything. The book's great too. I read the book too. So
I must
Princess
have
Bride's...
like missed this movie or something.
You've never seen Princess Bride? Oh, okay.
I saw it once, but it was like super nostalgic to everyone when I finally got to it. And then I like don't get it or something. Like I'm missing something, because it's like the zeitgeist of people loving it. And I just don't understand it. So maybe I need to watch it again with like a different lens or something.
Just watch it and appreciate the dialogue for what it is, because it's you need to watch it with people who aren't going to talk through it. That's probably the clincher, right? Like, because the people are nostalgia, but like it's more than I promise you, it's more than that. As in, like,
does it hold
the
up
dialogue,
like Star Wars?
Yes, more so than Star Wars in many ways.
Oh.
It has very, very witty, snappy, clever dialogue, and that's what's appreciable about it, I think.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna throw Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog on there as well. This was a little web series that was made during the writer's strike by Joss Whedon. It's really, really funny, really, really cute, and a bit tragic in some really shocking ways. Made by Joss Whedon, which is unfortunate that he has kind of fallen from grace, but his work still stands on its own merits, I think, and Dr. Horrible's is up there. Taming the Shrew. Now we're getting into the Shakespeare. I had to pick which like Shakespeare love story is my favorite, and I'm gonna go with Taming the Shrew. I know it can be interpreted as a wee bit sexist, but that is not, I think, the point he was trying to make. And if you actually study what's happening in the play, it's actually pretty interesting to people who actually respect one another, even though, as the title would imply, it seems on the face as if this man is taking this strong female and breaking her to his will. That is not what's happening. I promise you. That is not the interpretation Shakespeare or any serious scholars take on the work. And it's really good because of that, because of what's really going on between these two characters. It's a fascinating love story, very complicated and awesome. Romeo and Juliet, but not for Romeo and Juliet's love, but actually the love between Mercutio and Romeo, I think, is the more interesting relationship and subplot of that story. Far more like the show goes downhill when, spoilers for a 700-year play, Mercutio dies. The show, actually, it's interesting structurally speaking. The show is builds like a comedy until Mercutio dies, and then it becomes a tragedy. So there are definitely interpretations where Mercutio at least has romantic feelings for Romeo that are unrequited, which makes it even more possibly interesting and totally a valid interpretation of what's happening between the two characters. And but nevertheless, their brotherhood, their friendship is, I think, the real relational core of that story. Doctor Who season 1 and 2 of the reboot, the relationship between the Doctor and Rose, his companion, it's like the only romantic relationship they've done since the rebooted show between the companion and the Doctor, and it was so good, really well done, and really also tragic. I apparently like the tragic ones. And then finally, I'm going to pick my anime pick here is Fullmetal Alchemist. Once again, an example of great brotherly love. Love and the love the characters have for their mother as well. That familial love is really what drives the plot forward and causes them to make hellish decisions, but also heroic decisions that they both go into hell for one another and for their family. Basically, it's amazing, so good. So, all right, awesome. What do you look for though? So, what is something that you want in a love story?
I purposely did not keep reading my notes because I wanted to wait for this to be separate. So for me, the most single important trait of all love stories has to be authentic. I don't like, when I say love triangles make me uncomfortable, or the romantic posturing, the ruse, all of the fake things that people do. I hate you. I'm going to act outward in hatred, but I actually secretly love you. Like all that stuff drives me nuts. I want authentic love, and I want it to be transparent, but I also love stories that represent how messy real life relationships are, including some that end in tragedy, that don't work out, but the journey was valid. There's a series of shows from the New York Times, and I cannot remember the name of it. It's on Amazon Prime. They've dramatized their actual love notes that people write into New York Times, and they publish them in the newspaper, but they've made shows out of them. And they show these amazing love stories amongst people that not all of them work out. So it's not and it's not the point. It's actually, this is contrary to my entire existence, because everything I do in my life is structured in a way that gets results, and I'm very results oriented and achievement focused, trophies, right? And it's all about the end game, not the journey, because you always say journey before destination, right? So
I don't say in this case, Sanderson says it, and I just quote my Lord and Savior,
because you are you're Lord and Savior, right? So for me, authenticity about the love and the relationship, but also realistic in that it represents how messy real life relationships are, because all of the things we just talked about, that's not how love works in the real world at all.
No, it's not. My wife broke my heart and broke up with me over a Facebook message. I'm getting a little real and raw here myself. We dated for a while when we first kind of reconnected, met. We'll just say met. And then she broke up with me to go be with someone else. Granted, I was a rebound in the first place anyway, so it was a little but it was messy. That's your point. I think that's your point. Mm-hmm. And then in what I consider to be a fairly true act of love, not to toot my own horn or make myself seem awesome, it was genuinely one of the hardest things I had to do, because I wanted to be a selfish a-hole. But I had to just be her friend, choose to let go of what I wanted, which was to be in a romantic relationship with her, and just say, if I truly love her, I will just be what she needs me to be, which is her friend. And that's it, with no other expectations. And I did that. And then finally, as a result of that hard effort, I was finally the kind of person that was worth being loved by her on the back end of things. So no, it's messy, it's hard, it's tough, it's real, and doesn't always. But the nugget I wanted to get at is real love isn't results oriented. Real love is just the only result you should want, and when you're choosing to do something loving, is to just make the other person's life better. And if you're not doing that, then it's not love, right? So, which intimately as a parent, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But I went through a breakup. It was the other relationship I've ever had in my life that didn't work out, and I will always say, I always have said, that breakup was one of the single most formative things of my life, and like it's kind of controversial, but like everyone needs to go through that kind of heartbreak.
No, I had one of
You
each.
need
I was
that.
broken. You need to be broken up with once, and you need to break up once, because when you were breaking up with someone, I'm not gonna say every time because people are selfish as well, but I do think that in my case, for sure, breaking up was the best thing I could have done for myself because the relationship was making me miserable. So like sometimes you just have to be able to recognize that like if you are destroying yourself in sacrifice, there's a point at which the way love is supposed to work is you each sacrifice for each other, so neither of you get destroyed. So if you're just sacrificing and being destroyed, it usually means they're not sacrificing in return. And it's the best thing you can do in that case is to cut ties and find someone who will fulfill you, and that your sacrifice will be meaningful because they will sacrifice for you as well. Sorry. So as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of like well thematically crafted stories, right? Where stories that say they don't have to be like authentic in the sense you're talking about. Like Princess Bride, for example, is one that is just very, very like I said, melodramatic and over the top and ridiculous at points, but it says something about the human experience. And so it's not so much that the relationship itself is genuine or authentic, but its message is. And I love that's the kind of like love story that I'm looking for, is one that's like says something about the world and about being human, specifically about being a human in love. So with that in mind, let's talk about video games finally in our video game podcast.
Hey,
what do you think are the best video game love stories? Why don't we just sort of alternate back and forth? So you go first and then I'll go with mine.
Sure. And this is why I go all the way back to my very first question about like defining what you mean by a love story, because I picked Final Fantasy VII, which if you look at the plot of the game, it has nothing to do with love. It's actually like a more environmental, like a giant corporation kind of anti-capitalist message and pro-environmentalist message, but if you look at every single individual character, there is a love story arc that is going on that is immensely emotional and very deep and engaging. And so Final Fantasy VII is like the buffet of love stories. Like,
yeah, no, I can see it I thought you were going to make a different argument about it. And so, and I was literally about to disagree, but then when you put it that way, I'm like, oh yeah, no, you've got like Barrett's love for Marlene. Like all the characters are motivated by their love for someone, and
or
then
they're bitter
their
about
love
how
for
love
each other.
didn't. Or like because I'm thinking of like Sid and his wife. He's bitter at Shinra because of Shinra's actions. Like his wife died, and he's so that's the revenge story. Like Shinra killed his wife, he's mad. And then like Red 13, he's like a science. His whole clan, right? That's the that's like the
but also his
whole
dad,
family.
But he doesn't know about his dad. He thinks his dad abandoned them. So that once again, that's sort of like I'm hardened towards someone, but then when he finds out that his dad actually died because he went to go like cover the back entrance of Cosmo Canyon all by himself, and then it's like, oh, then he's like suddenly filled with this like, oh my gosh, I've hated this person for no reason. But again, once again, that hatred, sort of that dichotomy of like hatred to passion. Yeah, no, you are right for that reason. Actually, I left out Final Fantasy VII because the romantic subplots of that I think are not fleshed out enough to be, in fact, so much so that like people still to this day debate over Aerith and Tifa because neither of them have like a really well fleshed out relationship with Cloud enough to justify either of them having a love story with him that is satisfying. Hopefully that changes a bit in the remake, but that's my personal opinion. But I'm glad that's your take on it because I thought it was gonna be something else. So when I actually said that the one I thought you were thinking about is actually my second choice, Uncharted 4. It's once again a swashbuckling adventure, but and the in almost all the Uncharted's, actually, the relationship between Nate and Elena is sort of treated as secondary until 4. So also, obviously, there's the love story between Nate and his brother, but I think that more powerfully so is the love story between Nate and Elena, because their love is like their marriage, their love, their lifelong relationship with one another is like truly tested in the 4th one, and they prevail. And I think it's really, really beautiful, really powerful. And I just love Nate and Elena's story, even though in Uncharted 4 is, again, a multi-dimensional story with many like thematic elements. But
even with Nate and Elena through the other Uncharted games, like their relationship started in 1 and they went through some stuff. It's real. They didn't work out. Like he started a different relationship in Uncharted 2.
They break up.
And like, it's, and then it circles back around to 4 where like, No, it's almost like your story with your wife. How many times do they like come together and break apart and come
Yeah,
together, and then
yeah.
like in the end, it's like
Will they?
this
Won't they?
awesome, beautiful
Yeah,
culmination
and then
story.
I
Yeah.
love. I mean, seriously, one of the greatest designed levels in any video game, in my opinion, is still the one in their home together. And yeah, there's little Easter eggs like you play Banjo
Crash
Kazooie,
Bandicoot.
but like or Crash Bandicoot, right? Sorry, but it's that core
Mm-hmm.
relationship there that just really like made that entire thing just super enjoyable. So
Yeah.
cool. All right, what's your next one?
Gone Home. It's a story. It's a little indie game. It's pretty quick. It's told in a first-person walkabout, if you like, a walking simulator. But from the perspective of a teenage girl she loves another woman, and her parents obviously didn't agree with it, and so she's like wrote all these letters around the house to like kind of come out and articulate her love for her partner. And it was paramount in representation in the gaming industry for non-heteronormative relationships. So I'm going to throw that out there as like one of my favorite love stories. When I first played it, I was more trophy oriented and like it didn't click. And then I haven't played it since, but I've done some reading on it and like the impact that it had and how it people responded to it on Twitter and how wonderful and beautiful the story was. I need to go back and finish it. It's because it's apparently a pretty easy 100%er, but I didn't do that. So like I want to revisit this now with like a new lens. Over the last couple of years, I've gone through quite a big transition in how I view the world. So like I
Yeah.
need to go back and get Gone Home in it. But for anyone audience members listening who want like an insight from a different perspective that's not heteronormative, go after Gone Home. It was foundational, and a lot of other games have come from this. This was like the one that broke the ice or broke the seal, if you will, and like realized told a lot of people that this kind of game can be successful in the gaming industry and put it out there, tell your story, and it's beautiful. So Gone Home.
All right, so my Final Fantasy picks, I combine them into one because they're very similar
Mm-hmm.
in how their love stories play out. But 8 and 10, I think, have very similar love stories, and much, in my opinion, these are the quintessential video game romance tales.
Yeah.
Granted, of course, they're both kind of like,
Trophy.
well, yes, cliche and trophy and melodramatic, but but the love between unlike 7, which has this very wishy-washy pick your own hot girl that you prefer approach to the relationships, like, no, you just like Squall and Rinoa and Titus and Yuna, and in both games they have these very beautiful, amazing cutscenes of the like romantic love between these two characters, passionate, beautiful. I love it. But they're in both cases they're either a cinematic or a scene that is like a very rare moment in Nobuo Uematsu's career, where in both cases he has a singer. And in 8, it's Eyes on Me, which is still one of my favorite songs. It's actually become a lullaby in my house for my kids. And in 10, it's Sudaki Deni. It's in Japanese, but it's a beautiful song with a singer. It's just always tugs on my romantic side in a good way. And yes, both stories are couched around also, a team of people that love each other, but like really those, I think, romantic relationships actually pop in both those stories in a way that they don't in other Final Fantasies. And even though both stories are kind of couched around these crazy, time traveling sorceresses and big giant whale gods and all that fun, awesome Final Fantasy stuff, to me, they're what I remember about both those stories is the love story. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, they're both great love stories.
I don't know about Final Fantasy VIII, but if you just like Google video game love stories or like best video game love stories, Final Fantasy X is on every single list.
It
so
is.
like you
I'm
nailed
disappointed that 8 isn't. I feel like 8 is overshadowed by 10 because they're very.
Maybe.
I think they're over. I think they're similar, right? They're similar in that regard. So
And
I
I'm
bet
over
you
here
that
like waving the Final Fantasy IX flag. Like, where's that recognition? Like,
okay, yeah,
Zidane
I almost
and
included
Dagger,
that because
like
Garnet, the Garnet
Yeah.
and the Garnet wedding sequence,
oh
crazy cinematic, like, no, don't marry him,
yeah,
is also another moment that pops and stands out to me as well. And I haven't even played that one, but I think it's because 8 wasn't as loved mechanically, like as a game, that people sort of slept on that love story, as opposed to, because I think Squall and Yuna deserve to be on those lists too. Not Yuna, Squall and Yuna, Squall and Rinoa.
yeah. Some websites do have 8. I've seen representation there, but
good.
everyone's got 10, like for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about Uematsu is that his music is so freaking good that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you want awesome, crazy battle music to get you pumped to kill that bad guy? Boom, I got you, fam. Same time, do you want that sweeping ballad that just makes your heart flutter and makes you want to grab your loved one in your arms and kiss him on the mouth. Like, yeah, I got that. I got you on that too. He's so talented.
I listen to
what's the
Final
next
Fantasy
one?
music frequently.
Oh,
Anyway,
constantly,
my next one is The Witcher 3, of course, like because of the Netflix show. I guess it's kind of in the cultural zeitgeist again. It's there, and then like it's people are talking about it.
But
the video
love
game,
triangle, come on, quintessential love triangle.
Well, that's what it's interesting because it's kind of a love. It's
You're
weird.
Team Yennefer, aren't you? You're a Yen fan, aren't you?
I don't know. I kind of like Triss.
Oh, really?
Like, I kind of fancied
choice.
Triss.
Termite?
I fancied
Spicy.
Triss in my gameplay through of Witcher 3, but I hadn't played 1 or 2. I haven't read the
She's
books.
much better in the game than she is in the show.
Yeah, and like then I see the show and I'm like,
she's better. She's better in season 2 of the show.
She is.
The real love story of The Witcher, though, let's be real, is Geralt and Ciri, though.
Roach.
Roach. Yeah. No,
Roach is the horse, for y'all,
familial,
if you don't know.
the father
Familial
daughter
love with
love,
but
yeah.
not biological daughter. It's almost like
No, but
adoptive
still.
by circumstance,
Yeah.
kind of.
Well,
like,
it's no different than Joel and Ellie, so.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, Witcher 3's got a lot of love going for it. And yeah, I put Witcher 3 on here because of the like memory loss Geralt with Yennefer in their past that kind of comes through in the game, but you chase after other women too, and it comes to a head. It kind of is a love triangle, but not in the trite way you would think about. It's a little bit more deep than that.
You can play everything completely committed,
which is kind of cool. You know, it's the player.
They give you the choice, right? If you want to
agency,
be that
player agency.
I definitely did that in my Persona playthrough with.
Hey, I'm committed, man. I can't do it.
Although to be fair,
the words
I reloaded.
come up in Persona 5, like in red text. It's like you have committed, and I feel so attacked. I'm like, gosh, okay, I'm not doing that.
Fair,
all right.
I flirted with not flirted with the women necessarily. I wanted to see how the other romances played out. So I would like go through them all and then reload my save and do it not the romance way.
I'm just going to YouTube those. Like I don't have the time to go through that in the game itself. So like I picked one girl. I'm going to go through it with that.
Like 5 minutes. But anyways, Persona's not on my list. This is not a surprising pick for me. God of War. I speak too much about this game, so I'll just say the obvious: the father and son love, and the love for their mother who died off screen. Yeah, there's a massive amount of love in that game. Similarly, all the love that the other characters, even the antagonistic ones, right? Like Freya's love for even her just awful son, just really, really interesting, messy, complicated, just like you were saying, human, wonderful. So next.
I agree. I put Final Fantasy 15. It's a lot of Final Fantasy on this list. And I put Final Fantasy 15 because yes, it has the main
Japanese
character, like the
tell
whole...
good stories.
They really do. Like the whole plot of the game is like the 4 dudes are on their way to their bachelor party because he's about to marry, and it's all royalty, and so there's a lot of government issues going on. But what I wanted to highlight with Final Fantasy 15, the reason why it's on my list here is because of the bromance.
Yeah,
I had my like movie examples of bromances. It's like nothing for some reason, and I don't know why. My wife is always cracked up about it. If you want to get Termite emotional, like no joke, no kidding. Termite's gonna cry emotional. Put a bromance in front of like I don't know what it is about bromances, but there's just something about like the bond between dudes that's very unique, and it doesn't have to be like I've seen the exact same thing in my other example of Netflix's Sex Education. There's actually like dudes who are not straight, also friends, like platonic friends with other dudes. And the same bromance thing happens there too. So like it has nothing to do with like
with sexuality,
their sexual orientation or anything. But like I put Final Fantasy 15 because of the bromance. The 4 dudes, they're very unique in their personalities. They fight, argue, bicker, and they go through a whole thing, a whole arch. And at the very end, I mean, like the chapter 13 forward, like to the end of the game, wow, just like unbelievable what they do for each other. And it gets real fast, and it just hits. So Final Fantasy 15 for that reason, not because of
hit Persona real quick to your last one as well.
Yeah, so, and I put Persona 5, which we just touched about. Yeah, you talk about like the buffet of love stories. It's a phenomenal web woven of like everyone reacting to each other, working together. You've got everything you talked about in love stories where you have like a fellowship of friends who are together, power, friendship, love, and then you have like romantic relationships between the main character, and you can romance different females if you would like, and you can choose to commit to one or not. Then you can play the field if you want. But there's a whole lot going on in Persona 5. There's a lot of big
that player choice. Sometimes I feel like that game, well, we can talk about this in the next one, but this is an example, and so was The Witcher, of like sometimes that player agency aspect of it where you kind of get to choose it. I feel like they have to minimize it
They do.
as a result.
Yeah.
Like the actual love stories suffer as a result because you also have to create a satisfying story arc for the characters independent of it. Because if you choose no one, if you just don't care, don't want it, and don't, there are some people out there who are asexual or aromantic, and they don't like, it's just not something that they have a drive for, and so they avoid it. You still want to make the narrative satisfying for them. So, like, Mass Effect suffers from that as well, where it's like, yeah, like the love stories are okay, but they're not like, because you could go through it without ever experiencing it. It's like, I like the ones where they force it upon you a little bit better. They force you to come face to face. They can make the love stories more powerful that way because it's part of the thing. So, anyways, but that's not to say that I'm not trying to say you're wrong in your opinion, like Persona 5. Even if you do go the aromantic route, like we said, there's so many great. There's the bromance between, with Ryuji and Fox. I'm blanking on his name right now, his actual name. Yusuke, right. And then there's the familial love between, the sort of adoptive familial love between Joker and Oracle, which is why it always skeeves me out when people go romantic with her. Ugh,
yeah, it's weird. I couldn't,
it's real
like,
weird.
Futaba, no, she's your sister, bro.
Yeah, no, she's totally. Yeah, no, that's your sister. Like, it may not be
and
blood,
the game
but
even says it. Like, Sejiro's please don't go for Futaba.
Yeah, please don't do that.
He actually says that. I was
absolutely not. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, bro. I'm with you. Maybe that's
don't worry.
Being a parent. Yeah,
it's not going to happen. He's like, I don't want to have to call you son or something. I don't know what it was, but it was weird. Yeah.
All right. So mine real quick. It Takes Two, obviously, like working even like the idea of cooperation and collaboration, into gameplay. I don't know how it ends out, but even if it ends up tragic, like, again, love is sort of a core driving factor. And it's that great, sweet, awesome, actual comedic example of like where the relationship is, also a punching bag for the jokes, right?
Yep.
It's the source of much of the humor of the game as well. So it's good. And then I'm going to say Last of Us 1 and 2. I think that was telegraphed by my revenge story. Both of them, in both cases, again.
Unbelievable. See, that is the opposite of what you were talking about with player agency, the solution to that problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Go play The Last of Us. You have to do the things you don't want to do. And it tells
every single one of my examples,
story.
None of them have player choice. They're all pre-scripted love stories, but in my opinion, more powerful as a result.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Anyways, cool. All right, we don't have a lot of time for these last questions, but I still want to hit them, and I'll find something to cut in it. So we're gonna combine them all into one super question and just try to answer it as quickly as possible in both cases. But what do you think makes video games a good medium for telling love stories? What are some challenges, and how do you think video games can evolve and challenge more of those comfortable notions or status quos relating to love stories that were cliches, you might say, that we're used to?
Mm-hmm. So, what makes video games a good medium for telling love stories? Their visual aspect in interactive gameplay. That's unique to video games. That's a thing that you can be leveraged in a unique way to give the player an experience. Maybe you tell the exact same story that a movie would tell, but you do it through a video game and it just hits different because you have stakes in it. You have skin in the game. You're doing it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What makes that a challenging medium? I'm going to go with that answer we talked about before, where too much player agency actually minimizes the impact of the story because you have to cater to all different possibilities. And so you still want to balance what the player is allowed to do with its freedom or their freedom and what they're not allowed to do with the story that you want to tell. And so there's a struggle there. I think it's also, books have a unique way of conveying emotions through words that I don't think translate to visual at all. And that actually is a fault of the movie industry too. So a love story told through a book is very unique. It will not translate to a movie or a video game.
You get
whatever that is.
Books
they
have the nice advantage of being able to get into the characters' minds in a way that others can't. So you can hear that internal dialogue that we all experience. That's part of what makes it advantageous. You can't it gets cheesy when you start having the voiceovers represent people's thoughts in either video games or movies. If done well, it can still be pretty cool and still be done well, but it's not always done well.
And it's one thing I love that's kind of unique to video games is that you can present environmental storytelling through what I said with Gone Home, where it's notes that you can read. Some of them are voice acted and that might take you out of it, but other games have notes. And then you enter into the whole debate about how much environmental stuff is worth. Do you read all the codex and all the games and look at all? No, I don't. I skip all that stuff. So it depends on what you do. And that's a fault. That all of that are challenges to the medium of video games to tell a really good love story. Do you want me to answer the second question too?
There are some let me take a crack at the first one. Yeah. I'll quickly say there are some really fascinating love stories in Bloodborne that happen as sort of subplots.
Mm-hmm.
but they are all environmentally told. None of them are in the forefront at all. Not even like the immediate background. It's like you have to dig for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get what you're saying. Is like the average player, not even the average player, most players, even the ones who are super into it, are going to miss those love stories.
Ooh.
You have to be like very committed.
I'll tell you a really good example of exactly that problem is a pitfall here. The creator, Hazelight Studios, of Game of the Year, It Takes Two, years ago made a game called Brother, Tale of Two Sons. And in it, there's no English and there's no text. They just grunt and they act. And in it, there's like a death of it's an intro scene. It's not a spoiler. The brothers lose their mom. And it's a super emotional scene. But their voices are all like gibberish and it doesn't land. Like, I don't feel emotionally connected to it at all. I tried to. I was like, I can connect the fact that these two brothers have lost their mom and they're going after like how to help their dad who's now injured and they might lose their dad too. And they have to work together to get through that. And there's like a lot of struggle, but it's a meaningful story and it's worth playing. It's a great game, but it just doesn't hit. And I feel like that whatever we're trying to talk about put words to this thing where like that's the limitation of video games. There, it's that.
Yeah. So advantages, I think that again, like some of the advantages are like the idea of interactivity, the idea of like you're doing something means that you're investing something. It makes the stakes, I think, feel more real when done well. And you're actually, I mean, you're working, right? Like you're working on it. You're toiling just like you do in real life, right? Like, so when you're watching a movie or reading a book, you don't get that, right? Because you're just sort of, exactly, you're passive. You're just sort of, you're a watcher. You're an observer. You're seeing it play out. And that can still be meaningful and powerful. But there's definitely something about like you're working at it. It speaks to the idea that love has to be worked at. And even if it's, you know, to the realm of melodrama, to the realm of like stakes that we never will experience, it's still that feeling of like going after and getting better and plotting and being motivated. There's something amazing about video game stories that like can take a game that's like, you know, the gameplay can be meh, but like if you're motivated by this story, like, and you want to do the thing, like you're gonna be into it. And even the rote repetitive tasks are like, yeah, I'm going for it, right? And love stories have the ability to really
more satisfying about Persona 5 than going after like the most evil scum of the earth who are just awful individuals and like I'm gonna wreck them. And it could be a hard boss fight and like you're struggling and you're like, crap, I'm gonna die, and you have to come up with a strategy and like beat them, but I'm doing it and I feel so good.
But you do and you do the same in like Final Fantasy, right? When you know Garnet is about to marry what's his butt, and you're like, no, and so you fight for her, right?
And the
like,
music
and
builds and it's intense and like you have to run and sprint.
Oh, exactly.
So good.
Games, they put you into that. They throw you into it. You're not just a passive observer. You're an agent,
doing it.
Part of it. Challenges. I mean, there's a lot, right? Like there's, like I guess, and many of them have just as much to do with culture than they do about the, you know, the medium itself. But like, you know, you've got this like massive thing that has to appeal to a lot of people, right? So you can't always tell the most powerful love story because you have to kind of cater. I talked about it a little bit with player agency, but even in games that don't have player agency, like they still have to kind of tell a watered down story sometimes because they have to appeal to people who just don't care or don't want that lovey crap in their games, right? There's also this sort of male dominated, you know, like toxic masculinity aspect in the gaming culture that really does get in the way. It's happening less and less now, but it's really, I feel like we missed out on like a couple decades worth of what could have been great love stories because, you know, teenage boys don't want any of that lovey crap. They want action, guns, explosions. And it's like, so we missed out on some really good creativity there. So, but that's more cultural. I think that, but even so, games themselves, like, you know, when you've got the developers' time so focused on also making good gameplay, then sometimes I do think the story suffers. Not having gameplay that's very divorced from what's happening as well. Like, you know, depending on what kind of love story you're telling, if you're trying to tell this really like deep and subtle, nuanced love story while having a game that's got like bashing people's skulls in, right? That lacks subtlety and all of its other action. Those two things don't always line up and can make for some dissonance there. So there's a big challenge in trying to marry that gameplay with that subtlety in storytelling when necessary, which is I think why they lean towards melodrama sometimes, right? Like a lot of our examples are very melodramatic. It's because like that melodrama matches the sort of dramatic action that a lot of these games are built off of. So all right, cool. What then, how can they evolve? I think that speaking to my idea of the sort of toxic masculinity, I know I've noticed in my life with video games is almost always unilaterally, if you can play as a girl, you can romance other women. That's because, as we've talked about on the podcast before, there's a large population of men out there that play as female characters for various reasons and then feel weird about romancing males, even if they're playing a female. And you know what?
Right.
I'll admit it. I'm one of them. I feel weird like flirting with Caden or flirting with the soldier boy in Mass Effect 2. And I'm like, I'm playing as femshep, but I'm gonna play her as a lesbian because that's just feels more comfortable for me. So I want to say a game out there that forces you into the shoes of a woman and forces you to romance like a man, maybe even save a man. Oh, God forbid that a man be in a tower trapped and needs to be saved. Like that role reversal I'm talking about. I feel like game designers need to put that into more games for two reasons. Number one, to force some of these men to, have a perspective outside of their very narrow one that they're catered to. And then number two, because women play games too, right? And women want games. Women have tolerated just, romancing women as men for years in video games. And women, and yes, there's sort of like, oh, they, when you have player agency, yeah, sure, they throw you a bone and give you some men's romance optionally as well. But that's what I'm saying. It's like no options, just do it. Like let the women who play games have their male romances and make those males who want to play good games that happen to have female protagonists, make them squirm a little bit and get more comfortable with a perspective outside their own. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. And I completely agree, but I think there's a little bit more. I'm going to flesh out.
Absolutely. And I want you to, take it to the next level.
So I want representation from the queer community in general. And this I'm going to pull out, but I am not drawing a unilateral connection or putting these two situations in our country at equal odds. They each need their own situation, but race in our country in America, Black voices, specifically when George Floyd was murdered, and how we saw the world create a gap where Black voices were echoed. Let's get the perspective of Black Americans. Let's hear what they have to say. Let's listen to them and their perspective and their stories. The same analogy for storytelling here. I want to hear voices from the queer community. I want to hear stories told by them, and I want to see them represented in our games. I don't want
I just talked about playing as a woman and romancing a man.
Right.
Well, now imagine playing as a man and romancing a man, right? Like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
is like you're
let's
right.
Go.
Like how much more uncomfortable would that make?
Good.
And I'll even admit to myself, like that would make me a little uncomfortable at certain points, and that's good, right? We grow when we're uncomfortable. It doesn't mean necessarily we have to change our worldview or change our mind about things, but it helps us think like, oh wow, yeah, like they're people still, right? And they have their passions and they have their foibles, and yeah, I'm into it. I'm here for it, and I would be willing to grow in that way. And I would hope that our listeners and the rest of the gaming community would be absolutely on board for that as well. And not just be like, nah, I'm not playing as some gaybo. It's like, no, get out. You're not welcome here.
Yeah.
So,
like, let's be affirming and look for those kinds of stories. And let's get more games out there. It's not even necessarily about
affirmation. It's more just like we're people, right? And
normalize it.
That's something that I just
normal.
Have to like always harp back on is just like, and that's where I'm coming to is like, everybody has pain and joy. Like those are the two things that every human being experiences, like some little, even if it's just a little bit of joy, or even if you're super privileged and only ever have a little bit of pain, you still have it, and everyone has both. And it's like, we can be sympathetic towards one another, even if we don't ultimately agree with one another's conclusions about how one should live. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, we need to acknowledge that we're all folk. So yeah, anyways, we're out of time. I hope I didn't cut you off. Is there any other, like, did you want to squeeze out one last little bit?
Love doesn't discriminate. Queer relationships and normal relationships, like, they don't need to be labeled. And I want to see more out. I want to see more from like the non-heteronormative stuff. I want to see stories and voices elevated more than just like, don't just put it in a game for like representation's sake. I want to hear what they're saying. I want to know what a transgendered, doesn't matter from which gender to what, like a transgender would say or experience something. I want to know what a homosexual male couple looks like, what a homosexual female couple looks like, explore adoption and like trauma that happens on all sides of every single permutation of combination of gender identity and adoption and kids and family. Like, I want to see those stories being told in video games on a more normal level. Like, I want to get to a point where I see a man, a white dude, and a white girl in a relationship and be like, that's weird. I haven't seen that in 10 years. That's crazy. Because there's so many other types of love and relationship out there that's just one tiny speck on the spectrum. And yet that's the one that like the majority of video games are today. So that's what I want to see tore down. I want to see that go away, and I want to see like everything. I want all the spectrum.
That's the show. That's love. Next week, we are talking about Elden Ring. Oh, because it's coming out. And so we'll be talking about From Software, doing a developer profile. Termite's quick spiel is go to our website, 80bitpodsmash.com. If you want to interact with us or engage with us or find out more about us, just 80bitpodsmash.com. Normally, we do the full plug, but we start the time. So join us next week as we celebrate the release of what may be the game of the year, what may be a brand new masterpiece that will reshape gaming as we know it, or it may just be a pretty
Horizon
decent
Forbidden
From
West.
Software game.
Oh.
No. Elden Ring, From Software next week. Bye.
See you next week.